Chris Cenac is the most unpredictable freshman big in the country. Let's lock in and find out why.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Thank you as always for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Make sure to download the app today. Thanks again for joining us today. As always, my name's Albert. He's Corey Tulaba, my co-host. We're really excited to be here. It's always a great time, Corey, when we can get together and talk about the draft, talk about college basketball, the NBA. That connection is where we are, and I'm really excited. Corey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on with you, brother?
I'm excited to talk hoops today, man. You know, it's a blessing to be here with you, sharing the stage, talking hoops, best part of the week. I'm ready to just get into it today, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, as I mentioned, as I've been thinking, we've been talking about this a lot though, Corey, like we're in that stage now. We're on the runway, we're getting ready to go. Launch time is coming. And so we've got a guy today, Chris Cenac, right? A guy who I'm really excited to talk about, Corey, because he's a guy that we got to see in person at the Nike Hoop Summit, a guy who is highly regarded, highly touted, is going to be really looked upon as a really interesting piece to this Houston Cougars roster. And so, Corey, we're going to throw it to you, Professor Tulaba. Let's get into the lab. Give us your intro on Chris Cenac.
Okay, so Chris Cenac, he is a freshman big going to Houston via Link Academy, one of the premier high school teams in the country. He is listed at 6'11", 240 via the Houston team site. He has a reported 7'3" wingspan. I know Houston kind of gave out the wingspans, I guess, officially, unofficially, because they test for that stuff. That's something they look for in their players. He will be 19.38 years old on draft night. He is a McDonald's All-American and a member of the Nike Hoop Summit USA team. 18 games worth of stats via Synergy for Link Academy. He averaged 12.3 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, 1.3 assists per game to 2.7 turnovers. So a 0.49 assist to turnover ratio there, and then 1 steal and 1.1 blocks per game. He did that on 45, 36, 78 shooting splits. So he had a 54.4 true shooting, 48.3 effective field goal, which are, a little bit low for a big. So this is a guy who is getting mentioned as a potential top 5 guy. It's a guy who's being mentioned as a potential returner next season. There is a lot of outcomes for Chris Cenac this year as a freshman at Houston, but super talented and a guy who I think we're going to have a lot of interesting discussions about regarding his game.
No, Corey, I mean, my cold open today said Chris Cenac is the most unpredictable freshman big in the country. And I think it's fitting with everything that you just kind of went over. And we're about to get into his offense here specifically. And I think this is the part of his game that you have some, actually, both ends of the floor, I think we've got some questions. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and let it be known. I think for me personally, Corey, on both ends of the floor, I had some real questions about his game.
Totally.
Let me kind of get started with the offensive side. The first note that I have here in my notes, I've said he's an interesting outside shooter.
Okay.
And the reason why I said that is because it feels like it's a part of his game that he enjoys. I don't want to say that I think he's good at it, but it is a part of his game that I think he very much enjoys. When you watch the film, there are real moments where you can kind of see, Corey, I'm sure you know this, and I always like this in my context. You know those big guys that just want to be guards so bad, that just wish they were not bigs and they're not really into the big man stuff? That's the strong feeling I got from Chris Cenac in watching his tape.
I had the same note. My
Okay.
note is he wants to be a wing.
So, people say that we're the old married couple and we have the same thoughts. No, but there are some real instances where he's got the ball in his hands and he's trying to do stuff. And I'm like, dude, can you just be the big man here? Is kind of what I had in my notes here. And I got a little frustrated at times. But to his credit, and when you get this sometimes when you have big guys that are like this, he's got some guard wing skills to him that make him interesting. If we kind of shift over to the positive side, right? For a guy his size, he's got a decent handle. He can do some things with the ball in his hands. Once again, he likes to shoot it from outside, and he's actually shown some decent touch from outside.
I think he could. I think he's going to shoot it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And actually that kind of correlates to my comp later as well. But and I saw some footage of him working out this summer heading into his freshman season. And he's working on like shots off the dribble, right? Doing some interesting stuff with the ball in his hands. But I still have some questions. And so before I get into that, Corey, I want to give you an opportunity. What are some of your takeaways after watching his film in terms of where you think he's at right now as an offensive player?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that there's like intriguing flashes, and there most certainly are, right? Like, and you see that he can chew gum and dribble at the same time. Yeah. Like he tries to do too much. And it's actually interesting because like, when I went through his stats and you look at 1.3 assists to 2.7 turnovers, and you go, oh, this is a guy who is kind of maybe low feel. And I didn't get that impression. To the contrary, I actually thought he had some really interesting moments passing the ball. Like, he's really adept at hitting cutters. He threw like an alley-oop from the three-point line with such great touch. And I think that touch also shows in his three-point shooting, where it's like a soft ball. I think mechanically there are some issues that'll get ironed out. But like as a passer, I was actually pretty into it. Like, he made against Columbus, dude, he made these 3 skip passes to the weak side of the floor, keeping the ball high, 0.5 decision making, that I was like, dude, that rocks. Like, what's going on with this turnover stuff? And then you look at his turnovers and you go, oh, it's because he's trying to dribble too much.
Yeah.
Stop dribbling too much. Like, every time he tries to bust out some kind of combo move, it's like he's getting stripped, or he's dribbling into a defender, or it's one of the reasons that he's not so efficient at the rim. Like, at the rim, he's 57 points in overall, 54.2% in the half court. Those are guard numbers, and he's listed at 6'11", and he's being listed as a center. And I don't necessarily think he is a full-time center, but it's because he's like trying to attack off these like face-ups, and he can kind of only do it in a straight line. Like, I guess he's got like some wiggle for like a big man, but like not wiggle for a basketball player. So like, he's not really doing a great enough job like beating dudes off the bounce consistently to where he can blow by. And then when guys rotate over or recover, like, he's trying to go through them because he doesn't have like the counters all the time. And that's kind of affecting his percentages at the rim. So it's like, he has avenues to where he can just eliminate that stuff and be super effective. It's just like, is he going to want to do it? Now, he's going to Houston, which is like a no-nonsense program that makes me believe he's willing to be coached and probably won't do that stuff. Now, like, we look at a guy like Jarris Walker. Jarris had way more handle and way more shake, and he was able to do a little bit of it. But Houston will give you some freedom, even if you're a freshman, if you're a high level player. I don't think he has the tools to have that same kind of freedom consistently, but I do think he'll have the freedom to shoot it. And like, it's just going to be about honing in that game, even like eliminating, like, dude, he loves the mid-range jumper, like that, like turnaround, or just like, and hey, that's like sometimes that's a good shot, but like he loves settling in that area. So, I think that he's got skills. His footwork's pretty good. Sometimes he'll have these like spin moves when he does see a defender rotating over. That looks pretty smooth. I just want to see zero bag work from him. Like, I know, he's with a very good trainer, and like, it's awesome. He's honing these skills. I don't think he's going to use them. Like, he doesn't need those skills right now. Like, I just do the big man stuff, like you said.
But really quick, piggybacking off of that, Corey, the next thing I wrote in my notes is, does he like doing big man things? Right? Like I thought, for as good and interesting as his touch was from outside, I thought his touch around the rim was a little inconsistent at times,
Totally.
and I really thought he struggled to play through contact, and
Big time.
and if yeah, and there were moments where I was like, oh, you're
And he's
actually
not a string bean.
avoiding. Yeah, he's not, but he struggles with it. And I didn't like that. And I thought with his athleticism too, I thought like he's okay, but you mostly saw it like when he had a head of steam and kind of had like an open lane runway for him to kind of, get going first. I just had some real questions and I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And to your point, Corey, with the context that he's going to, um, I don't think they're going to let him do the type of stuff that he likes to do. But if he knew that and he chose Houston, maybe the messaging is to the world is, guys, relax. Like I'm gonna play a more refined role, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
I will say he does do some big man things.
Okay.
He's a good rebound. He led the Nike Scholastic League in rebounding per game. I saw him like make a pretty sick Gortat screen, right? Like when he was underneath the hoop to help somebody get and it's one that was, I saw him do it one time. So yeah, small sample there, obviously, but like I saw he knew to do it.
Yeah.
He does a good job. Like when he has a size mismatch of like,
That's true.
like getting behind the player who's fronting him and making himself available to where the guard can throw it over the top. And I like Jerry Easter on Link, and like throw it over the top to him to where he can just go straight up. So like he's doing some of the big man things. Like he's capable of it. It's just like he also wants to play like a wing. And at the high school level, he's talented enough to do it to where like the juice is worth the squeeze for that program to let him experiment, because he could still play a winning brand of basketball while exploring the studio space.
Right.
As he jumps up levels, he does not have the ball skills to be given that same freedom, especially when he's turning the ball over and not creating for his teammates nearly enough. The NBA is not going in that direction. And so, yeah, it's intriguing because he's tall. And I don't know if he looks 6'11". I mean, I saw him at the McDonald's All-American game. We saw him at the Hoop Summit. I'm not saying he's short. I don't think he's 6'8", but like, I don't know if he's 6'11". And so, it's just, if he commits to playing the game the way that I think NBA coaches, because I think front offices will look at tools and go, okay, this is what he could theoretically be.
Yeah.
And then coaches will get him and go, hey, man, I don't care what you're going to be 4 years from now. I need to keep my job for the next 4 years. Go do the big man, go set screens and roll. And, so I think he's one of these guys where it's like, there might be a push and pull between like a coaching staff and a front office who envisions him as like a unicorn.
But also, Corey, like it might be a thing where like our conversation about him is very different when it comes to when we're in like June.
Yeah,
right.
totally.
Like maybe he has a very defined role for Houston and
100%.
he accepts it and he thrives in it. And then suddenly he's in the conversation. He's like a clear lottery guy, right? With, his size and then some of the other like ancillary stuff that he's able to do as a big with his size and length. Like teams might get super interested, right? If he can kind of tighten some things up. So it really could be a thing, Corey, where like our preseason conversation about him is one way. And then our like actual draft season conversation about him looks completely different. And we've had that happen a lot to us both ways, right? Where like initially we're really excited and then it goes not so great. And so in terms of like his offensive player though, Corey, as we wrap and before we go to break, I feel like there's opportunity for him to be a very solid offensive player. But there is also a ceiling that he's going to be dreaming about and that maybe NBA teams could be dreaming about him being like a really versatile, interesting big who can handle the ball and shoot from outside. It's there. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't think either of us are like really confident that that's going to happen, but it's there and it could be interesting and it could be a part of his future. And so as interesting as all that is, now we're about to get into the defense. But before we do, we've got this break. We're back. We're back and we're still talking about Chris Cenac, and we're gonna get to the defensive side of the ball. And Corey, for me, man, I think this side of the ball was a little bit more interesting for me. Is a kind of a good way to put it. I thought there
Interesting
was
in a
some,
good way, or
yeah, I think for me
okay,
in a good way,
okay.
because there were still some things that I did not like on this side of the ball. I want to kind of throw that out there, but there were some really nice things on this side of the ball where I was like, oh, I genuinely like this, right? Like I'm really, really excited. So some of the things that I want to go over before I hand it over to you. So there was a game when they were playing AZ Compass,
Mhm.
right? And they've got Micah Murinen, right? He was just playing in
Yeah,
Eurobasket,
yeah,
right? Really
he's all over the internet.
all over the internet.
Slim
I
Jesus,
thought,
I think they call him.
great name, great name. I wish somebody would call me Slim something. But actually, my nickname in college was Slim Gim because I used to be skinny back then, not anymore. But anyway, they were playing AZ Compass, and he had a couple of possessions where I was like, I really like this, to the point where I had to write it down in my notes. So the thing that I found here that I like about him, but is going to be like an issue type of thing. I think when I don't want to use this word. I was thinking lazy, but not lazy, but when he's not as engaged.
Mhm.
Is that the nicer way of saying? When
Mhm.
he's not as engaged, he kind of goes into hunched over mode. When he's hunched over, he looks really unathletic. He looks slow. He doesn't look locked in. I don't love it. But then as soon as he gets into a stance, Corey, he'll get low into his stance. Suddenly, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of thing. Suddenly, he moves really fluidly, side to side, laterally, right? He's really engaged, using his length, becoming a pest. He had a couple like really nice possessions against Micah Murinen of AZ Compass, where he was making his life difficult, flipping his hips, moving his feet. I was like, oh, this I like. But there are kind of two faces to him, right? At times when he's not as engaged and he's kind of doing the hunched over type of thing, I'm like, oh, this looks bad. This not only aesthetically does it look bad, but you are not hitting your potential as a defender. But then once he flips that switch and he gets low in his stance and he's moving his feet, it looks great, Corey. So that's kind of my nice little intro here before I hand it over to you. But I was very interested. And I was very impressed at times with what he was able to do and the skill set and the toolbox that he has as a defender. And I think sometimes when we're talking about a guy who's this young, sometimes that toolbox is like 80% of the conversation, right? Because this is pre-college coaching, pre-NBA coaching. And so if they have that kind of rock solid toolbox, you get excited. And so I'll stop talking, Corey. What'd you see with Chris Cenac in terms of the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it all. Like, he obviously awesome tools, right? I don't think he's like the most athletic run jump guy in the world. Like, he's a good athlete, and for his size, I think he's like pretty smooth laterally as a mover. He's got awesome tools. I think he's prone to relying on the tools a lot. And at the high school level, sometimes you can get away with it, right? But like oftentimes for him, it kind of led to like lazy or late rotations, or he'd like swipe at the ball trying to like dig at somebody, or his closeout would be super lazy and they'd be able to attack his top foot. I labeled him a theoretically switchable defender because he has good lateral mobility and he can guard on the ball. He can guard multiple positions. He can guard guards and use his length and that good lateral mobility to force tough shots. And like those are good things. But for me, the problem came when he was cross-matched on a switch onto a guard, and that guard didn't have the ball in their hands and they were off the ball. And now he's focused and ball watching the switch, and his man is off the ball, and he's not keeping his head on a swivel, and he's not locked in that way, and he's getting hit with a back screen, or he's just like looking and his man's cutting to the rim. And so he's relying on these tools that he has, and he certainly has them. I think he needs to get coached up, and he most certainly will, especially on the defensive end at Houston. And he's going to have a hell of an infrastructure there with their surrounding players defensively. But like, you know, there is like that inconsistency. I mean, he averaged in the 18 games on Synergy, he had 20 blocks. This is a dude who's listed at 6'11 with a 7'3 wingspan and is supposed to be like a rim protecting two-way player, and he averaged 1 block a game. And he had a game against Lehigh where, if you want to see what the full picture looked like, he had 5 blocks in that game. So like 5 of those blocks came against Lehigh.
Yeah.
And so he had 15 blocks in the other 17 games. You know, like, he's not creating nearly enough events defensively for the tools that he has. And I think that goes into some of the times where you're like, you know, I really wish you were more locked in defensively. You're the big man. You are the anchor. You need to be the guy who's leading that entire defense. And it didn't always feel like he was doing that. It felt like he was doing it sometimes. But even when he was blocking shots, it was more like recovery stuff rather than being in the right position. And like, you know, it was just like, oh, I'm super long and I can get to this shot. Now, I do like that he was able to block shots with both hands.
Yeah.
I do like that he has those recovery tools. I like that he's switchable. I like that he has all of the stuff. I like that he does rebound. But it's going to get harder. And, you know, so hopefully that Houston system, the ethos that they have towards the defensive side of the ball and playing next to a JoJo Tugler, right? And playing for Coach Sampson, hopefully that brings out the consistency within him and we see it way more often. And instead, like you said, when we're talking about him in the lead up to the draft, we're going, this dude is a beast of a two-way player because he's really efficient offensively, picking and popping, rolling to the rim, making nice short roll reads, taking that, trimming the fat of that offensive game, and then locking in defensively. And then we're looking at a guy that we're just super, super, super excited about.
Yeah. No, Corey, you know, Corey, we talk about context, and you mentioned he's going to Houston. For Link, though, the one thing I will say is, like, they were switch heavy and they really kind of tested him. And it felt like it was almost like a testing trust type of thing where it's like, hey, we're going to switch everything and you've got to survive out there. And I think, Corey, that's why, you know, even what you brought up with him, like off ball and losing focus or whatever, like that was also a product of his context where, because they were switching everything, we got to see that. Right. And that actually kind of makes me excited because now he's going to be in Houston and I'm really excited to see what he looks like in this context. I think, as you mentioned, the infrastructure, the coaching, the ethos, the energy that they play with. I'm really hoping that rubs off on him because I think you and I, Corey, we're kind of getting to a consensus here. Can I say the word? That he's got to lock in a little bit. We want to see a little bit more of that focus, that energy, the correct.
If he doesn't lock in, he's not going to be on the floor. Like, Houston's defensive structure, like as a big, he is going to be playing to what they call the line of scrimmage. So it's like not a full on like blitz or hard hedge.
Right.
It's going to be like he is playing up to the level to try to and use the length with 2 on the ball to kind of force turnovers. And then like they're going to play the no middle. So he's going to have to like be in the right spots, you know, on the weak side of so like if he's just not doing it, he's just not going to be on the floor because they're trying to win a championship, right? So like he's going to be thrown to the fire.
Right. And Corey, to your point, if you're demanding that your big meets at the level, he better bust his butt to get back and recover. Like it's a non-negotiable if that's going to be the foundation of your defense and you're playing at the level like that. And so, Corey, absolutely. I just feel like the context that he's going to be in, it's going to be your make or break type of situation. It's either going to make him into a rock solid lottery guy, or he might end up looking to transfer. It literally could be that situation or coming back, whatever, either or. But you get what I'm saying? Like he kind of put himself in the perfect situation, I think, where it's really going to test him. And I think that's kind of exciting for both of us, right? In terms of, because I think this is the side of the ball where it could really, I'm sorry to bring it up again, but really make or break what his future looks like as an NBA big as well. And so I think both of us, Corey, were interested in him as a defender, but also have some serious questions. And we're just going to have to wait and see see how he reacts to the context that he's in. And so we're about to go to break. But before we do, we're going to come back after this with some really interesting comps. I know I've got some weird ones. I'm sure Corey does too, but we'll see you guys after the break. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I mean, FanDuel right now, it's such an easy-to-use app, but more importantly, the NFL season has been really exciting and crazy so far. Maybe this weekend you take a bet on the red hot Colts, right? The 2-0 Indianapolis Colts with Indiana Jones, Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback. I'm sure that hurts Corey's feelings to hear. Or maybe you're looking at, I don't know, maybe a lot of interesting games this weekend. Steelers Patriots maybe gets you going. Broncos Chargers, a big AFC West matchup. There are a lot of things that you can bet on this weekend. And if you're going to do it, the best place to do it is on FanDuel. So if you are ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet today. Corey, I'm sorry I had to bring in the Daniel Jones thing. I know that's a tough one for you.
Hey man, our quarterback threw a beautiful Hail Mary that ultimately didn't matter, unless you're looking at it from the perspective of we're a couple of games closer to the Jackson Dart experience.
There it is, which is I'm very excited about for you, and for the Giants. But Corey, we're back and we're talking about Chris Cenac and we're talking about some comps.
Yes.
And as always, I'm going to have my mix of guys. But Corey, let's start off with you. Who are some guys that you were reminded of while you were watching his game?
First guy who came to mind, and all of my players I feel like are kind of similar, which I guess makes sense because I'm trying to comp him to players that he plays like. My mind immediately went to Bobby Portis.
Okay.
Who I looked at like similar measurements. Bobby Portis was a 2-year guy when he came out, but has turned himself into like a pick and pop floor spacing big, but also is not anchoring your defense, more of like a power forward 4-5 than the reverse. So he was the first guy that I was like, all right, if he can simplify his game and he'll still shoot it, he just won't do as many of the guard things, but like can still go out and rebound, block an occasional shot. That was kind of where my mind went first. Similarly, I went with like taller PJ Washington. PJ Washington, I went and checked, measured without shoes, a lot shorter than you realize. I think he was like 6'6.5" without shoes or something. And then John Collins, who was kind of, wasn't a shooter in college necessarily, but has expanded his game a little bit. So those were the three guys I kind of went with.
Damn you. Okay. John Collins is one of mine as well. And because like my thing with Collins is that like there have been moments in his career where you can feel him wanting to do more guard stuff. And it's kind of like, nah, dude, like let's just simplify your game and you're going to be okay. So John Collins is one of mine. Here's a fun one, Corey, and I'm ready for you to either love it or hate it. I'm not sure how you're going to react because he's a guy that's near and dear to both of our hearts.
Okay.
So here we go. My 90s comp, 90s 2000 comp, his name, number 40 on the New York Knicks, Kurt Thomas.
Okay, modern Kurt Thomas.
So my idea with the Kurt Thomas thing is like thinking back to his days as a Knick, a guy who was like always so rock solid on the boards, but a guy who really enjoyed stepping out and taking that mid-range jumper.
Money at the elbow.
Just absolutely destructive from there. Was such a smart, heady, effective player on both ends of the floor. Defensively was never like an elite shot blocker or anything like that, but was so solid for you always. And like the vision with Cenac is that like hopefully he can be like a rock solid defender for you, who maybe isn't a 7-footer, but can offer you a real interior presence with his length. Because Kurt Thomas was another guy who wasn't a 7-footer, but was tough as nails, had really good wingspan. So that was like my idea with Cenac and Kurt Thomas. Like maybe he could be that type of player if he cleans some of that stuff up. And then the other guy was John Collins. So somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
And like Corey, obviously you had a relationship with Kurt Thomas as well. How do you feel about that comp?
I like it. Like obviously, Kurt Thomas wasn't shooting threes but
No.
he was doing his thing as a pick and pop guy
Yeah.
just for that era. If he played now, I think he probably pops to the 3-point line, right? So he looks different in this modern era. And I think where we're seeing like the common denominator for the guys that we picked is we're not comparing him to Anthony Davis, or Kristaps Porzingis, or any of these bigs that are Karl Anthony Towns. We're not comparing him to these unicorn bigs because I just don't think where he's at right now in his development, and I don't think we're going to see it at Houston, given that team context and structure. I think that we're trying to temper hey, this guy is a lock to be like the top 5 or whatever. And like the dude's talented, McDonald's All-American, Nike Hoop Summit, 5-star, right? Like totally talented, great player, great talent, interesting skill set. He's got a lot to clean up, and we're trying to, I think, keep it into a much more realistic box that doesn't put expectations on him that are hard for any player to reach. And and look, we're not like above doing that, right? We've put super high expectations on all of the top 3 guys. We've mentioned sky high potential. I count Braylon Mullins earlier in the week to, a version of Ray Allen. So it's not that we're afraid to go in that direction. It's just like, it has to make sense. And I think that these are the guys that make sense. And these are all longtime NBA players who are making tons and tons and tons of money. So it's not to say anything other than that, like, this is a surefire NBA talent. We're excited to see how he develops. He's got some stuff to clean up, some fat to trim off his game.
Absolutely, Corey. And I think a guy that we're going to keep a very close eye on this season as a freshman at Houston with the context that he's in. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Before we go, the Locked On NBA Top 100 is here, voted on by NBA hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every day. You can find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. As always, guys, my name's Albert. He's Corey. Thanks for locking in with us.